what are the unique social, cultural, and developmental challenges that India faces in preventing and responding to NCII?
So it's not just India, but South Asia in general, or any culture that places such a high emphasis on the concept of shame, and the other side of the coin is honor. So izzat, as it is called, the honor of men, the honor of the family, honor of the clan, community, city. It rests in the sexual property of its women. In my native language, there's a saying that a woman's character, and by that it means perceived character. Our culture is essentially a shame based culture. And image based abuse often produces consequences that involve the victim survivor's family, caste, community, workplace, the marriage market, all of which is beyond the primary online harm, the primary act. It goes outside all of those perimeters. So that brings in the fear of shame, social stigma, victim blaming, and that suppresses reporting by victims, especially women, queer people, minors, gender diverse persons, people in smaller towns or rural areas. And therefore, that needs urgent survivor protection policy. So the Indian laws around rape, and those also took many years of advocacy and campaigning, was that the identity, there is the cultural aspect of what constitutes intimacy. So it's not just nude or sexually explicit images. It's an image of a woman swimming or consuming alcohol or dancing or just walking down the street with a man who's not related to her, or a private chat screenshot that's taken out of context, or anything that looks culturally taboo can be weaponized. And it's possible for imagery to be sexually exploitative and reputationally damaging without being nude or sexually explicit. So the intent here is reputational damage. It's not some sort of real or perceived wrongdoing on part of the victim. The intent is damaging the reputation of the victim because it is very easy to damage. It is like a glass vessel. Um and therefore policy must define image based abuse around consent, around the context, around harm, around the impact on the victim survivor, and not only sexual explicitness or nudity or what the law would consider obscenity or pornography.
You just said that it is how should image-based abuse be defined in today's digital environment, and why it is important to move beyond narrow understanding of NCII.
So, image based abuse should be defined around the impact on the victim survivor and not the motive of the perpetrator. So, impact over intent, that should be the primary framing. Now, whether the perpetrator did it out of revenge, for profit, to coerce, for humor, for sexual gratification, for harassment or social control, or for following some sort of social mores that this person has brought shame to us, so let's put them in their place. None of that matters. It should be treated as a breach of trust and a violation of consent. When the matter is consensually short but meant to be private, it should be treated as a violation of privacy. It should be framed around informed consent of the persons in the imagery and nothing else. So that should be the basis of the understanding of all image-based abuse. Revenge porn is a more well-known and more commonplace term, especially amongst laypersons, but it's a harmful term. And one of the reasons it is harmful is that it misplaces blame on the victim survivors by implying that they've done something which invited. Another thing that should form the basis of the understanding of image-based abuse is that it's an ongoing harm, and it's an ecosystem. It's not a single act. It's not a discrete act of one act of sharing or one act of recording someone in a place where they expect privacy, of planting a camera. It is sustained by the way it is circulated on platforms, on search engines, group chats, instant messengers, porn sites, cloud storage, so on and so forth. So the harm to victims, survivors is long lasting, and therefore it should be understood as the full range of activities that cause lasting harm, which includes capture of these images or creation of these images by using AI tools, possession, making threats of leaking these images, sharing images, redistribution, amplification. So we should include that full range, and that constitutes the abuse, not just discrete acts. And another thing to remember is that having these narrow definitions leave survivors unprotected. So if the laws or the platform rules only cover, say, nude images or former partner revenge or explicit sexual content, then it'll miss acts like threatening or deep fakes or hidden camera abuse or abuse of cameras that are not hidden. Another thing to remember is that having these narrow definitions leave survivors unprotected. So if the laws or the platform rules only cover, say, nude images or former partner revenge or explicit sexual content, then it'll miss acts like threatening or deep fakes or hidden camera abuse or abuse of cameras that are not hidden. Sometimes so the narrower definitions will miss things like coerced images or repeated reposting by someone who doesn't even know the victim survivor. At the same time, having a broader definition improves support to the survivors in terms of law, in terms of moderation systems available. It helps policymakers, police, courts, platforms, and organizations that support victim survivors to respond to the full life cycle of abuse. So when it comes to prevention, reporting, or takedown of images, or preserving the evidence in a way that's admissible in courts, because there's a